I moved into my new house less than a month ago. I thought it would be a good way to start fresh. My old job in marketing was stressful, and I needed a break. This house was modest and quiet, built in the early 90s. The creaking floors felt like they held secrets. I hoped it would help me unwind. The first few nights were peaceful. I unpacked and set up my office. I finally felt like I was making progress. Then came my second night. I was fast asleep when a loud thump jolted me awake. It echoed from the attic. My heart raced. I pushed the covers aside and sat up. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe just the house settling. That I finally worked up the courage to check the attic. I climbed the stairs slowly, each creak echoing in the stillness. When I reached the attic, it was empty. Just old boxes and dust. I shook my head. Maybe I was too wound up. Strange things began happening over the next couple of weeks. One day, I moved a mug from the kitchen counter to my desk. Later, I found it back on the counter. I wondered if I was just forgetful. My kitchen towel also seemed to hang differently. Did someone else use it? I felt silly thinking about it. One night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The shadows shifted, and I thought I saw something move. I blinked and leaned in to look. A dark shadow darted across the wall. My heart thudded in my chest. I felt a chill. Was I imagining things? Wanting to calm down, I decided to get some fresh air. I crept to the window. The street was empty, bathed in moonlight. I turned back and noticed something odd near the attic door. It was half open. I had closed it earlier. Fear gnawed at me as I knelt to check. What I saw inside left me sick. The attic floor was covered with children's drawings, colorful crayon illustrations of a family I didn't recognize. My breath quickened. I wanted to leave. The air felt heavy. I hurried back down, but then I heard a soft thump from the attic again. I nearly tripped. I wanted to scream but ran back to my room and slammed the door. Why was this happening? My mind spun. I wanted to shake it off, but doubts crept in. Was the house haunted? Just then, I heard a child's giggle, faint and distant, echoing through the house. I turned my head sharply toward my door. My throat went dry. I stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. The house felt wrong. That giggle rang in my ears like a curse. It wasn't my imagination. I was not alone. The next day, I felt drained. I could hardly focus on my work. I needed answers, or at least to address what was happening. As I brewed my morning coffee, I tried to convince myself it was just my mind playing tricks. Maybe I was simply adjusting to the change. I dressed and stepped outside, hoping some fresh air would help. I figured it was time to meet my neighbor, the only other person on my street. Her house looked well kept, with flower pots lining the front step. I hesitated. Would I sound crazy if I started asking about ghosts? I knocked, and Mrs. Taylor opened the door. She looked friendly, with gray hair pulled back in a bun and kind blue eyes. "Hello. I'm your new neighbor," I said, trying to sound upbeat. "Oh, welcome. I'm glad to meet you," she replied, gesturing for me to come in. We chatted about the neighborhood, but I couldn't hold back my curiosity. Is it true that the previous owners had kids? I found something unusual in my attic. Mrs. Taylor's expression immediately changed. "Oh, the Hendersons?" "Yes, they had 2 little ones. Twin girls, I think." She paused, taking a breath. "Not many people live there long." I frowned. "Why is that?" Her voice lowered as if she were sharing something sacred. "People say they hear things." "The girls used to play?" I interrupted, my heart racing. "Yes, in that attic of yours," she continued, glancing away for a moment. "But you mustn't worry. It's all just folklore. They used to say it was just echoes, really. I felt a chill run down my spine. Echoes of what? Mrs. Taylor smiled back, but it didn't seem genuine. Children's laughter, you know. It sounds like fun, but believe me, it can be unsettling. I thanked her and returned to my house, my mind swirling. It all made sense now. The giggle, the drawings, the thump. The house had a history, a dark one that I was now part of. When I entered, the air was thick, the shadows deeper than before. I ached to convince myself I should turn around and leave. Instead, curiosity won. I made my way to the attic, almost drawn to it. The door stood ajar, and I could see the sketches scattered on the floor from last night's horror. I took a deep breath and pushed the door fully open, stepping inside. This time, I noticed something new. Among the drawings, a single piece caught my eye. It was different, a crude image of a girl with long hair and a tall figure lurking behind her. Suddenly, the temperature dropped. I felt a tingling sensation race up my arms as I heard a soft whisper, close yet distant, just behind my ear. "Come play with us." My breath hitched. It wasn't just my imagination. Someone or something was here. Adrenaline surged through my veins. I backed out of the attic slowly, but before I could slam the door, I caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, my heart pounding. The attic was still dark, but now I could hear the faint sound of a child's laughter, echoing in the silence. The temperature was icy, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that I wasn't alone. Standing there, panic surged through me as I scrambled for the door, my hand fumbling on the knob. I just wanted to get out. As I stepped into the hall, the laughter faded into a soft giggle, leaving me shaky and breathless. I rushed downstairs, trying to convince myself it had all been a dream. I flipped on the kitchen light and leaned against the counter, taking a moment to collect my thoughts. I needed to leave this place. The history of that attic was too chilling. My fingers brushed against the edge of a drawing that had slipped to the floor. I picked it up, examining the figure again. The tall, dark shape behind the girl seemed to have eyes, and they were looking right at me. Staring at it, I finally decided to do some research. Maybe there was someone who could help. I grabbed my phone and searched for the nearest historical society. Their website suggested that the Hendersons may have faced tragedy, but it offered no specific details. I sighed in frustration. That wasn't enough. Later that evening, I decided to visit the local library. It was my only option to dig deeper into the history of the house. As I stepped inside, a cool breeze followed me, sending goosebumps racing down my arms. The library was nearly empty, save for a few people buried in books. Finding the history section, I asked the librarian about the Hendersons. "Ah, tragic story, really," she replied, her gaze turning somber. "They lost their daughters in a terrible accident around this time of year many years ago." "What happened?" I felt my stomach drop. She glanced around, as if worried someone might overhear. "They were playing by the road. The driver didn't stop." The image of the sketch flashed through my mind. Was it possible their spirits were still tied to this place? I had to know more. The librarian handed me a newspaper clipping from that period, the headline stark, "Tragic Day for the Henderson Family." I left the library, my mind in a frenzy. Could the whispering laughter be the girls from the past? I felt a knot form as I returned home. As I walked in, I was met by an oppressive silence. The walls seemed to close in, and the air grew thick. I made my way to the attic once more, drawn by an inexplicable urge. I needed to confront whatever was happening. When I reached the attic door, it was fully closed. I hesitated, considering turning back. But that voice, "Come play with us," echoed in my mind. I pushed the door open, but this time I was ready. As I stepped inside, I spotted one of the sketches on the floor again. But it was different now. The tall figure behind the girl was no longer vague, it was clear. I looked closer, realizing the figure was holding a small hand. A sudden clatter made me jump. A bright pink doll had fallen from a shelf, landing at my feet. "Come play with us," the voice rang out again, clearer this time. I spun around, and there in the darkness, two shadowy figures formed at the edge of the room, their giggles mingling with the whispers that I stumbled back, panic clawing at me. Someone was in the house, and they were not alone. I froze, my breath hitching as the giggles danced around the room. The shadowy figures moved closer, and I couldn't discern if they were children or something far more sinister. Instinct took over, and I turned to flee, but my feet felt glued to the ground. Then I heard a soft whisper, right in my ear. "Please don't go." I whipped around, expecting to see a small face staring up at me, but the figures had vanished. The attic was eerily quiet, the doll at my feet mocking me with its bright pink smile. I managed to take a shaky step back, nearly tripping over the doll as I stumbled toward the door. My heart raced as I opened the door and bolted down the stairs, glancing nervously over my shoulder. Whatever was up there, I didn't want to confront it again. I reached for my phone, ready to call for help, or at least talk to someone about what just happened. But before I could dial, I felt a chill sweep through the house, making me shiver. I plopped down on the couch, clutching my phone tightly. The house felt even emptier now. Then, the silence broke again, but this time it wasn't laughter. I heard soft, persistent knocks echoing through the walls. I whipped my head toward the sound, my mind racing. Was it the girls? Were they trying to communicate? Or was it something darker? I couldn't contain my curiosity or fear. My legs moved before I could think. I got up, creeping toward the kitchen where the knock seemed to be coming from. As I stepped into the kitchen, I noticed the air felt thick, almost suffocating. I found myself staring at the wall rather than the empty space in front of me, a familiar chill creeping down my spine. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for what I might discover. The knocks grew louder, sounding more insistent. I approached the wall, nearly pressing my ear to it, desperate to make sense of the noise. That's when I saw a faint outline of a small handprint in the dust. "Please don't leave," the whisper came again, softer this time. These words gripped me, tightening around my heart. What did it want? I turned quickly, wanting to escape the rising panic. But instead, I found myself staring at the doll that had fallen from the attic. It was now sitting in the middle of the kitchen floor, facing me with a crooked head and an unnatural grin. The moment I took a step back, the gas range clicked on, the sound piercing through the air. I felt heat rush my body as the flames flickered to life, just inches from my gasping face. I wasn't sure what was happening. Was this another warning? Before I had a chance to pull away, the kitchen door slammed shut behind me, trapping me inside. I threw myself against it, panicking. If I didn't find a way out, who knew what would happen next? In that moment, I realized I wasn't just dealing with spirits. There was something alive here, something ominous. And it was very much aware of me. I banged on the door, desperate to escape. "Let me out!" I shouted, my voice trembling. The flames danced higher, casting shadows that twisted ominously on the walls. I could feel the heat prickling my skin. I needed to think clearly, but panic clawed at me. As I turned back to the room, the doll was gone. Instead, a scratching sound came from the floor beneath my feet, like nails on wood. I crouched down, heart pounding, trying to peer into the darkness below. I could have sworn I saw something move in the shadowy gap between the cabinetry. "Show yourself!" I yelled, though I didn't believe a word of it. Every second felt like an eternity, and I felt trapped in a nightmare. I needed a plan. I glanced around for something, anything I could use. When I heard it again, the whisper, floating through the air like a wisp of smoke. "Help me." It was softer now, almost pleading. I froze again, feeling the chill wash over me, but the fear was different this time. It felt less urgent, more sorrowful. Before I could process anything, I heard a loud crash. A glass jar shattered across the floor behind me. I spun around, eyes wide, my breath hitching again. Should I run? Should I stay? The flames now flickered ominously, a reminder of how fragile my safety felt in that moment. I felt a surge of bravery, or maybe it was just desperation. I pulled the kitchen drawer open, searching for a knife or anything I could use to defend myself. My hands fumbled through the clutter, and I felt something cold and metallic. I grabbed it, but it wasn't a knife. It was a rusty old key. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. My heart raced again, but this time from curiosity. What could it unlock? I stood up slowly, looking from the key to the door, when I heard a faint laughter echoing around me, and it felt sinister rather than joyful. The sound sent a shiver down my spine, reminding me of the figures from the attic. "Why are you playing with me?" I whispered, feeling bewildered. "What do you want?" Before I could respond to my own question, the door creaked open slightly. The kitchen felt quieter, the flames on the gas stove clinging to life. I squinted into the dim hallway beyond, my instincts screaming at me to run, but something else drew me closer, an unseen force beckoning me forward. With the key clutched in my hand, I stepped cautiously into the hallway. Every creak of the floorboards felt amplified, like they were warning me to turn back. But I pressed on. I reached the darkened corner where I sensed the shadows thickened, then I spotted a door at the end of the hallway. It looked old, like it had been untouched for years. My breath hitched again as I moved closer, the key feeling heavier in my grasp. I had to know what was behind it. Just as I reached for the handle, a loud bang behind me made me jump. I spun around, heart racing. I could hear faint giggles again, but this time it was mixed with something else, a hint of frustration. I stood there, caught between fear and determination, knowing I had to open that door. But whatever was waiting beyond it could change everything. I grasped the rusty old key tighter, its cold metal digging into my palm. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I turned slowly, scanning the hallway for any sign of movement. The giggles faded into hush, leaving an unsettling silence in their wake. With a quiet resolve, I turned back to the door. My heart thundered in my chest in rhythm with the dread pooling in my stomach. The doorframe looked warped, its swollen wood groaning slightly as I nudged it. I hesitated, my mind racing. I could still feel the heat of the flames behind me, reminding me this was no time to linger. Taking a deep breath, I inserted the key into the rusted lock. The metal felt brittle as I applied pressure, and I half expected it to break. Instead, it turned with a satisfying click, echoing through the stillness. I pushed the door open slowly, the hinges creaking in protest. The room beyond was engulfed in darkness. I stepped inside, my heart racing as I flicked the switch. Flickering bulbs struggled to illuminate the space, eventually casting a dim light across the room. It looked like a storage area, filled with boxes covered in dust and cobwebs. Old furniture loomed in the corners, their shapes murky shadows in the glare. When I spotted it tucked away in a corner was an antique mirror. Its surface looked cracked, reflecting my pale face back at me. As I walked closer, a shiver rippled down my spine. I leaned in to inspect it better, when suddenly, my reflection changed. I blinked, and my face twisted in confusion. The girl in the mirror was not me. Her eyes were wide with fear, and it felt disorienting. She raised a hand, placing it on the glass, a desperate attempt to reach me. I stumbled back, my heart racing as the feeling of dread intensified. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely breaking through the suffocating silence. "No. Don't leave me," she pleaded, though her lips never moved. I felt a cold swell of panic rising within me. I couldn't look away from her terrified gaze. Something pulled at me, making me want to reach out and touch the glass. But I forced myself to turn away, shaking off the whispering voices that echoed in my head. Suddenly, I heard a rustle from the opposite corner, breaking through the horror stuck in my throat. I whirled around, instincts on high alert. Was someone else in the house? Another pair of giggles floated through the air, but this time it wasn't playful. It was mocking, sinister. The door slammed shut behind me with a thud. The sound echoed throughout the room, as jarring as ice water surging through my veins. Panic consumed me. My heart raced as I dashed toward the door, but it wouldn't budge. I dug my fingernails into the wood, pushing against it. "Let me out!" I shouted, but my voice faltered. Shadows danced wildly, the room feeling alive around me. It was then that I caught a glimpse of movement from the mirror once more. The other girl was still there, her face shifting to a wicked grin. As if sensing my fear, she raised both hands and slammed them against the glass. "Join us," she mouthed soundlessly. That I stumbled back, my breath quickening. The room was closing in around me. I had to escape. Just as I turned back toward the door, everything went dark. The lights flickered and died, leaving me surrounded by an oppressive blackness. The laughter echoed louder, a cacophony of voices rising to a fever pitch. Panic surged. I slapped my hands against the walls, desperately searching for a way out. My pulse raced as I shouted, "Get away from me!" But then I felt it, cold hands grasping my shoulders, holding me in place. I whipped around, ready to confront whatever was behind me, but there was only darkness. And then I heard the whispers again. "Help us!" I realized with a creeping horror that whatever was in the mirror was now all around me, and there was nowhere left to run. I felt my breath catch in my throat as the whispers enveloped me, echoing from all directions. "Help us!" The voices seemed to weave together, forming a chilling chorus. The cold hands released me, but the air was thick with a presence I couldn't see. I forced myself to move, each step a struggle against the weight of uncertainty. I reached out, my fingers grazing the walls in search of any kind of refuge. My mind raced, recalling fragments of old ghost stories I had heard. The kind that warned to never look back once you sensed something was behind you. Before I could gather my thoughts, the room shuddered, and I slammed into what felt like a door. The wood was solid against my body, but my mind screamed for me to keep moving. I fumbled for the knob, twisting it frantically, praying it would open. But it was as stubborn as my fear. The laughter returned, now mingling with a cacophony of cries, and it drowned out my own racing heartbeat. Suddenly, without warning, the lights flickered back to life. They buzzed overhead, stark and fluorescent, illuminating the room but casting long shadows that darted at the edges of my vision. That I turned slowly, expecting some terrifying figure to leap from the darkness, but instead, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. Taped against the far wall were faded photographs. My breath caught again. They featured children, dozens of them, all smiling as they played. The same ones I had heard laughing just moments earlier. One photograph made my blood run cold. A girl, identical to the one in the mirror, stood center frame. Her smile, frozen in time, looked eerily alive. It was the same smile the girl in the mirror wore just before she pressed her hands against the glass. Then I remembered the whispers. "Help us!" My hands shook as I reached for the photo, but I hesitated. What if touching it drew me in? What if I became trapped like her? I had to know, but my instincts screamed for me to run. With shaky fingers, I pulled the photo from the wall. A slip of paper fluttered down, crumpling at my feet. I picked it up and read, "Don't let them in." What does that mean? I whispered to the empty room. In that moment, shadows began creeping back into the corners, curling around the edges of my vision like smoke. I glanced back at the door, but it remained locked tight. The whispers escalated, a vortex of sound churning around me. And then I noticed another detail: the giggles were back, now more chaotic, echoing as if taunting me. They surrounded me, and amidst the frenzy, I heard a single clear voice. "Join us." I felt the pull again, something urging me toward the mirror. But I fought against it, backing away until I collided with the wall. My heart raced as I remembered the girl's last words. I had to find a way out, but I also knew I had to know more. I couldn't ignore the connection between that girl in the mirror and the laughter surrounding me. They were linked, and understanding that might be my only escape. With a newfound determination, I steeled myself and dashed back toward the mirror. I had to confront whatever was waiting there. This time, I wouldn't look away. I needed answers, even if they were terrifying. I placed my hand on the glass, bracing for what might come next. As my skin met the cool surface, it felt like electricity coursed through me. I had just stepped into the unknown, and whatever was on the other side promised I wouldn't be alone for much longer. As I pressed my hand against the mirror, a rush of cold air swept over me. For a brief moment, I felt weightless, as if my body was suspended between two worlds. Then, the sensation vanished, and the room jerked back into focus. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. That I was still in the same dimly lit room, but something had changed. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a storm. I spun in circles, desperate to find the source, but the cacophony was deafening. "Join us," the voice sang, tauntingly familiar yet distinctly foreign, weaving through the shadows. In the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement caught my attention. I turned, and for a fleeting moment, I swore I saw the girl from the photograph, the same girl who had mirrored my own reflection. She stood at the edge of the room, her smile wider than before, as if coaxing me closer. I blinked, and she vanished, leaving behind an echo of laughter that sent chills racing down my spine. I had to gather my thoughts. "Focus," I muttered, but the whispers clawed at the edges of my sanity. I scanned the room, noticing for the first time a large wardrobe pushed against the opposite wall. It seemed out of place, its dark wood gleaming under the flickering lights. My curiosity piqued. I wondered if it held answers to the chaos around me. I approached the wardrobe with cautious steps, each creak of the floorboards making me jump. The whispers quieted, almost as if they were holding their breath, anticipating my next move. I reached for the handle, the metal cold beneath my palm. With a deep inhale, I pulled the door open. Inside was a jumble of old clothes covered in dust, but something caught my eye: a small box tucked in the back. My throat tightened as I pulled it free, brushing off the layer of grime. It was wooden, intricately carved, and felt warm to the touch. Hesitation coursed through me. Was I about to make things worse? The whispers returned, insistent and excited, like children at play. "Open it. Open it," they urged. I took a deep breath, my fingers trembling as I lifted the lid. Inside lay a collection of faded trinkets: a cracked locket, a rusted key, and a note. I unfolded the yellowed paper, my heart racing. "For those who seek, remember this: what you find is not always what you wish for." The message sent a wave of dread through me, but I couldn't turn back now. I had gone too deep into this mystery. Just then, the wardrobe creaked ominously behind me, and the air turned icy. I felt eyes on me, an unseen presence closing in. "Don't let them in," the note echoed in my mind. I slammed the box shut, my heart pounding as fear took hold. As I turned to face the direction of the whispers, the mirror rippled in response. I saw movements behind the glass, shadows swirling, reaching out. I realized with a dawning horror that I was not just in a room anymore. I was standing at the edge of a threshold that I had to escape. But where? The door was still locked, and now the mirror seemed to beckon with a new urgency. "Join us," it sang again, but this time I could hear more voices swirling in the chorus. Breathing heavily, I stepped back, feeling trapped. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered violently, casting erratic shadows that danced across the walls. I could feel something pulling at the edges of my consciousness, urging me to step forward. What lay beyond the mirror felt more than just a reflection now. It felt like a gateway, and I was running out of time. The darkness pressed in around me, swallowing the light. My heart raced as I felt the air grow denser, thicker. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. I staggered backward, hands fumbling as I tried to steady myself against the wardrobe. It felt as if the room breathed in tandem with my fear. The mirror glimmered faintly, a spark in the all-consuming black, and I had to know what lay beyond it. The whispers were insistent, rising and falling like the tide. I edged closer again, the cold from the glass seeping into my skin, a harsher chill than before. Suddenly, the flickering light steadied, illuminating a path. The shadows danced as if they had a life of their own, beckoning me forward. I hesitated, glancing over my shoulder, feeling a pair of unseen eyes watching from the corners of the room, and then, without warning, the wardrobe door swung shut with a resounding bang. The noise echoed, piercing through the whispers and leaving me breathless. I turned back to the mirror, my pulse quickening. "What do you want from me?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. As if mocking my question, a soft glow emerged from the glass's surface. I leaned in closer, and for a fleeting moment, the reflection showed not my own face but the girl's. Her laugh floated through the air like a gentle breeze, and I felt something tug at my heart, a combination of familiarity and fear. "Help me," her voice cracked the stillness. My breath caught. She was reaching out, her small hands pressed against the surface of the glass. "Please, you have to come." I felt drawn to her, compelled to answer her call. But competing with that urge was the voice of caution, warning me of the dangers lurking behind the surface. "What is happening?" I pleaded, racking my mind for answers. I had to be careful, this was not a game. Before I could think further, a sharp clatter shattered the silence. A loose floorboard had creaked, the sound echoing through the room. My heart lurched. I turned again, scanning my surroundings, but nothing seemed out of place. Still, the sensation of being watched suffocated me. "Get away from the mirror." A voice hissed, raw and close. I spun around, eyes wide. But I was alone, or so I thought. The weight of the warning hung heavy in the air. My instinct screamed for me to move, to escape, but the girl's image lingered in my mind, her desperate plea still ringing. With a knot of dread tightening in my chest, I faced the mirror once more. "I'll help you," I declared, though doubt gnawed at me. I didn't understand what I was getting into. I reached my hand toward the mirror. The moment my fingers connected, a surge of energy pulsed through me. I felt the girl's presence stronger than ever, and with it came an overwhelming flood of memories, scenes not my own. Confusion and anguish danced with hope and longing, then everything stopped. I gasped, ripping my hand back as the world around me began to spin. The whispers transformed into a deafening roar once more, echoing with newfound urgency. "Join us!" they cried, mingling with laughter that felt both welcome and threatening. I stumbled back, fear gripping my throat, my thoughts spiraling into chaos, and just when I thought I had glimpsed the truth, the room lurched violently. The floor shook beneath me as the colors of the walls melted into darkness. I had tapped into something deeper, but now it was unraveling. "Help!" I shouted, but the shadows swallowed my plea as the boundaries of the room blurred. I steadied myself against the wardrobe once more, the weight of the girl's gaze heavy on my heart. I was not alone in this horror. But understanding was far from grasping. A cold realization washed over me, answering her call might mean my own descent into the unknown. What awaited me on the other side of the mirror was still a mystery, and I was slowly being pulled deeper into its depths. I swung the heavy door wide, panicking at the darkness lurking just beyond. The whispers had faded, replaced by a pulsating silence that left a sickening knot in my stomach. I was still in the storage room, but something felt different now, charged, as if the air around me held its breath, waiting for the next move. I backed away, my hands grazing the rough wood of the wardrobe, and for one frantic moment, I thought about bolting back to safety, but safety felt deceptive. As my heart pounded in my ears, I recalled the girl from the mirror and the laughter of the children echoing through these cursed walls. What if they were trapped, not malevolent spirits? An unsettling thought ignited within me. What if the laughter was not a call to me, but a plea for assistance? Maybe they wanted to share their story, reveal the truth behind their tragedy, and breaking this cycle of torment was my only hope. With that thought guiding me, I turned back toward the mirror. The cold surface shimmered under the dim light like an invitation, begging for my attention once more. My gaze fixed on it, and for a second, I didn't see my own reflection. Instead, the girl appeared again, her joyful visage cracked with worry. She mouthed, "Help us," through the glass, each word vibrating through the air like a desperate echo. "No. You can't keep trapping people," I shouted, my voice unsteady but firmer than before. "What do you want?" The laughter crescendoed, swirling around me, filling the sharp silence with wind like whispers of longing. "Join us." Panic bubbled within me as I grappled with the unexplainable urge to reach out again, but fear kept me firmly rooted. I remembered the note from the box, "What you find is not always what you wish for." That could easily describe what lay on the other side of the mirror, bright smiles hiding dark secrets. Suddenly, the ground beneath me trembled, bringing me back to the present. I could feel the energy swarming again, thick and heavy. The wardrobe creaked, and I turned my head sharply as the faintest hint of movement shimmered at the edge of my vision. It seemed nearly alive that I needed a plan. With one last, deep breath, I stepped forward again, feeling the pull of the mirror urging me. If I was going to confront whatever lay on the other side, I had to be brave, or be lost forever. "Who are you?" I demanded, somewhat forcefully, trying to anchor myself. The girl's eyes flickered, a mask of sorrow on her face. "Why can't you cross over to the other side?" In an instant, a thunderous crack shook the attic as the mirror began to ripple, the glass distorting the light around it. I stumbled back, desperately trying to comprehend what was happening. Without control, my feet moved toward it, and before I could stop myself, I flung my hands forward once more. My fingers brushed the glass, and in that moment, a wrenching, visceral compulsion surged. I could see it all: the day the girl had died, the moment of the accident, the chaotic tragedy thrust upon her family. The anguish hung heavy in the air, and I gasped, pulling back hard. "I understand. I can't leave you like this." With newfound clarity coursing through me, I shouted, "I will help you." But as I said those words, a tangle of shadows burst forth from the mirror, swirling around me like strings that sought to bind rather than embrace. "Join us," they screeched, but this time, I wasn't afraid. "No!" I screamed. I felt tethered to my world, my heart still beating fresh and alive as the whispers raged around me. The shadows turned, weakening their grip. "I'm here to free you," I insisted, facing the darkness they spun from. The laughter returned, a harmonious clash that echoed with my resolve, and suddenly, I understood. They were lost, yes, but they were just children grasping for hope after too long in despair. With one final defiant thrust, I pushed against the mirror, my eyes locking onto the girl's frantic expression. "You can be free. Just take my hand." I conjured every ounce of strength, feeling the warmth of life flow through me. In a final act of desperation, the mirror shattered, exploding into shimmering fragments that scattered into the abyss. I felt a rush of air pull past me, and then came silence. One heartbeat followed another, and amidst the chaos, I took a step back, my body trembling. The world around me had changed. No more whispers, no more shadows. I stood alone in the storage room, breathless. The desolation hung in the air, yet a strange serenity enveloped me. I looked toward the remnants of the mirror splintered on the floor. It was just glass now. With a heavy heart, I turned to leave, feeling the weight of what had happened settle deep within me. As I walked out, I could feel something different about the house. It felt lighter, almost as though gentle laughter lingered somewhere in the corners, fading into the silence. I still couldn't shake the confusion that swirled within me. Had I truly freed them, or had I merely opened another, darker chapter? There were no explanations left for me. I knew I would never fully comprehend the truth of that night. It lingered in the back of my mind, casting long shadows that tugged at my thoughts. I left the house and stepped into the world outside, the sun rising, illuminating my path ahead. I moved to a different city soon after, needing to escape the memories buried in those walls. Sometimes, late at night, the laughter echoes in my mind, a reminder of what happened and what might still linger just beyond the veil of the ordinary. Did I really help those children find peace? I guess, some questions really don't have answers.